Hi crafter! Today I'm going to teach you a new technique to add hair to your amigurumi dolls, and it will look as if the hair was coming out from the scalp of the toy. It's not the typical technique that you have seen in other places. So if you're interested in learning this new technique, stay and watch. To do these techniques, the only thing that we will need are a wig cap and the strands of yarn already cut and prepared. The first thing that we need to decide is whether we want our hair to come from the middle and to create a part, or if we want the hair in spiral all around the wig cap. So in this second case, everything will be covered in hair. If we do it this way, we will have a fuller hair. It will be lots of hair. But if we do it in this other way, actually it will be thinner. Actually, you can see here that we can see a little bit the wig cap, but it will be easier to comb and it will be easier to style. This actually depends on how you want to style your doll afterwards. If you want your doll to have long hair without doing any hairdo, then you can use both techniques actually. But if you want to have, like for example, ponytails or things like that, then I recommend you to do the second style, the one that has the part, because you will have less hair and it will be easier to style. As I want you to see properly how this technique works, I'm going to use two different colors for the wig cap and the hair. But you would need to use the same color for both things, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. Later, when I do the actual doll, I will be using the same color for both things. I'm going to create a spiral made of chain stitches inside this wig cap. I'm going to insert my hook from the inside of the wig cap to the outer part. I'm going to fold a hair strand and then I'm going to pull it into the wig cap. Now, with the strand of yarn still in my hook, I'm going to go to the next stitch, to the one next to the first one I did, and I'm going to insert again my hook from the inside to the outside, and I'm going to take a second folded strand of yarn. Now I'm going to pull it and I'm going to make it go through the first loop that I had in my hook. This way I'm creating the first chain stitch. It's important to pull the first strand of yarn so this chain stitch is tight. I'm going to repeat this process all around this spiral. Let's do the next one. We look for the next stitch. We go through the wig cap again. We take another folded strand of yarn, we pull it, and I make it go through the previous stitch, the previous loop. And as I said, it's important to pull the previous hairs because this way the chains are going to be tight. If we wanted to use this technique to make a part in the wig cap, then we would do exactly the same, but instead of going in spiral, we would create an imaginary line. We would do the same thing, but straight. So we insert our hook from the inside of the wig cap, we take some yarn, we pull it inside, and then we go to the next stitch and then we take another strand of yarn and we pull it. And this time we're going to go towards one of the edges of this wig cap. So this way we're going to create a straight line. Now I'm going to the next stitch, and as you can see, I'm creating a straight line. If it helps, you can use as a guide some pins that you can place beforehand, creating this imaginary line. And so on. So we have two options here. We can either start in the center and go to one end and then go back to the center and go to the other end, or you could start in one edge and then do all the straight line to the other edge. I start at the center because it's easier this way to keep a straight line. As you prefer, the result will be exactly the same. Then we can split the hairs, we can put them like that, we can style them like that to cover the wig cap. This is why this is so important to have the same color for the wig cap and for the hair, because it's not going to be as thick as when we're doing the spiral. If you feel it's too thin, the hair is too thin for you, then you can take, instead of just one strand of yarn every time, you can take two. We can take two each time, we fold them the exact same way as before, and then we introduce them inside with the technique I just showed you. It's exactly the same thing. And this way, from each one of the stitches, you will have two strands of yarn coming out, well, four, but in two pairs. And this way, it will cover better the wig cap. But as I said, you will be able to see some of the wig cap. So this is why I recommend using the same color, because this way it will give the impression that everything is covered in hair, even though it's not. As you can see here, I'm in the middle of the process of adding the hair. I'm creating this spiral inside of the wig cap. And here there is a trick that can be useful for you. And as you can see, I turned the wig cap. It's inside out. This way it's easier to see where you have to go to take the next folded strand of yarn. Instead of applying the hair like that, with the wig cap in its right position, that might be a little bit difficult at some point if you have too much hair, then if you turn it, it's going to be easier for you to see where you are going. Now my wig is almost complete. And the only thing that I need to do now is to complete this last row, to add hair in this last row, and I'm going to do it a bit differently. We are actually going to complete it the traditional way. If you see the inside of our wig cap, we've been creating this spiral made of chain stitches. And as you can see, we have this last stitch that we need to attach. This is the last stitch I made while doing this technique in spiral. So now I'm going to take some more yarn, and as you can see, I'm using pairs of strands of yarn. As I told you before, actually sometimes when you want fuller hair, you can use more than one strand of yarn each time. So this is what I'm doing with this wig cap here. Actually, I was adding 3 strands of yarn each time, but when I was more or less at the middle of this wig, I realized it was just too full, so I decided to go down to 2 strands of yarn each time. This is as you like. I'm going to take the last loop, the one I need to attach, and I'm going to insert my hook through one of the stitches of the edge of this wig cap. I take the new strand of yarn and I make it go through both the wig cap and the last loop in my hook. And now I make the tails go through this loop. And I pull. I also need to pull the last hairs so it stays really tight. Now it's well attached and tight. And now we can turn our wig, put it in the right position. And as you can see, the hair here looks a bit different. It's like a little knot. It's a traditional way of adding hair, actually. And we're going to repeat this technique all around the edge of the wig cap. If we kept doing the same technique as we did before, the yarn would come from here, and then all the edge, all this border, would be visible. It wouldn't be covered in hair. It would look a bit artificial. It would look like an actual wig. But by doing this, once we pull our tails, our yarn, backwards, then everything will look as if it was hair. So now we're going to do this technique all around the wig cap. So now I'm going to insert my hook through the edge in one stitch. I'm going to take my folded yarn I pull, and now I make the tails go through this loop. And I pull. We have the first one. We go to the next one. I insert my hook. I take the hair through the stitch and through the loop. And pull. And this is how it looks. If we put it on the doll right now, we can see the difference. If we use this technique, it looks like the hair comes from her head, but if we didn't do this, you would see that we have the edge. We can see the stitches, and then it looks less natural. It depends on your taste, actually, but in my case, I prefer not to see the stitches. I prefer to see hair. So we're going to keep adding hair to all the edge. And this is how it looks after you have finished using this technique. As you can see, it looks very natural. And as you can see, I have this strand of yarn, this tail, that actually comes from the wig cap. This is what we will need later to attach the wig cap to the head. I haven't sewn it yet because I wanted to show it to you. And as you can see with this technique, it looks very natural. It really looks like if the hair was coming out from the scalp. And as with this doll I worked in spiral, you can see that the hair has lots of volume, it's very full. And remember that if you want to use this technique and style it afterwards, style the hair afterwards, then you need to use this technique but doing this straight line. And now that the hair is done, the only thing that you need to do is to style it and to cut it so it has the shape and the length that you want. And this is it. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and that you use this technique for many of your dolls. And I will wait for you in the next video of Crafteando que es Gerundio.